This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me, our longtime Falcons analyst, Jarvis Davis, and Locked On Falcons host, Aaron Freeman. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And our Atlanta Football Party, of course, is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So after falling behind by a touchdown early, the Falcons scored 34 unanswered points to close out the New York Giants Sunday. We'll talk about how the defense did it again and who flew under the radar in this Falcons win. We'll also discuss what has us confident about the de facto playoff game in the district Sunday night. But first, let's talk about the early returns from the Penix experiment. It looked very promising. Jarvis, after a debut that saw him go 18 to 27 for 202 yards and what I saw as a blameless interception, Michael Penix Jr. said post-game on his first NFL start, quote, "I was ready for the moment." So give me one play that showed you Penix was indeed ready.
I think it was, it had to be the play where he kind of got rid of the football and avoided that sack, because I think that kind of speaks to like the poise that he showed throughout the entire game. He seemed like he didn't get rattled by anything. And one of the things that you talk about rookie quarterbacks is like, okay, when those live bullets start flying, like what are you going to do in those particular moments? And it's just the little things that really just make you understand that, hey, this guy has a full understanding of what's going on. And another play that really just kind of just really solidified my thoughts and beliefs on what he's going to be for this team going forward is that play when he threw it to Blair, the wide receiver, his boy, right? That's scout team buddy. Like those guys have a great rapport with each other. So, I think that there was a Penix, the DB for the Giants. He was kind of, falling back into the coverage, and then Blair didn't necessarily kind of like throttle down and kind of settle down in that thing. And Michael Penix, realizing that, he threw him kind of like a back shoulder type situation where he kind of turned around and kept him away from the DB, and he was able to make a nice catch. So I think that just little things like that are the reason why Falcons fans should be really excited about what Michael Penix is going to bring to the table.
Okay, Aaron, I know Jarvis is excited, so he didn't actually honor my assignment. So I'm going to go to you and ask you to honor it. One play that showed you Penix was indeed ready early, because I want to make sure that we have everybody gives an opportunity to speak on what it is that they liked about MPX. So give me one play.
There was a play on the second series where Penix was able to hit Drake London on just like a simple 5-yard route where the Giants brought a blitz, and that blitzer, I believe, beat Matthew Bergeron to get pressure in Penix's face, but Penix recognized it, threw into that sort of vacated area where that blitzer came from, where Drake London sort of settled, and just getting a positive gain to, I think, set up a 3rd and 5 that I don't think the Falcons wound up converting on that series, but just to get this offense in schedule, on the right track and keep them sorry. I'm just so choked up over thinking about
you're so excited about it. I get it, man. I get it.
But, I think that to me really kind of showed me, okay, like that was something that I thought Michael Penix did well in college, is usually getting to the right answers and whatnot. And sort of that was going to be the big question in the NFL. Would he be able to consistently do that, especially in his first game where, defenses were doing a lot more complicated things in the pros than they're doing in the college level. So that to me kind of showed me, okay, like, it wasn't like super complex or anything, just like where the blitz comes from. That's usually where you sort of throw your hot read at. But those are some of the things that young quarterbacks typically struggle with, and he didn't struggle with it on that particular play. So that really sort of showed me like, okay, the maturity, the poise, all those things that we've been hearing about and suspected that he would have are indeed there.
Exactly. And Tori McElhaney, our senior Falcons reporter, AtlantaFalcons.com. Rise up tonight. Good morning. Good morning. And I know that you're excited for these guys to talk about Michael Penix Jr. So I'm going to go right in and ask you, Tori, when you look back at yesterday's game, what was maybe that one play? Like he said, you were there post game. He said he was ready for the moment. What was that one play for you that showed you, yeah, he was absolutely ready?
I think it was the pass to Darnell Mooney in the second quarter where he kind of went up and over a defender at the midpoint, and he hit Darnell coming to the sideline. And I felt like that was – and there are a few different plays where I look back. I think he made a lot of really good decisions on 3rd and long on a couple of instances where the Falcons kind of didn't get what they wanted on 1st and 2nd down running the ball, and then he kept the drive alive by hitting Drake or Darnell or whoever. I thought that when I looked back at the game, and I'm still going through the tape, but something that Michael Penix, and this is something I talked a lot about in my own post-game podcast, was about the fact that coming out of college, a knock on Michael Penix was his lack of want to throw the ball over the middle. And there was a lot of people who kind of questioned why he did that. He was always somebody who went down the sideline, and he would make these big plays down the sideline, but very rarely did you see him kind of making the active decision to throw over the middle. And I think that was a knock of his coming out of the pre-draft process, and it was something that a lot of people questioned. How many times did we see Michael Penix go over the middle to Drake or Darnell or Chris Blair? It seemed as though he was so much more comfortable doing that. I think it's also a part of the scheme. That's a place where Drake London has kind of made his home and made his success, is over the middle of the defense, right over the linebackers. And so I think seeing that, one, was development on Michael Penix's end to kind of go in and be like, okay, this is a knock. This has been a knock on my game. I'm going to show you I can throw it over the middle, and I'm going to often because that's where my mismatches present itself. But I also think it was trusting the scheme and trusting and knowing kind of where guys were and what the route concepts were. I think overall you cannot minimize the fact that Michael Penix ran an incredibly clean operation. For this to be his first time working with this offensive line, working live in this scheme, working with these offensive weapons, the fact that it was as clean as what it was should be a very important note that people take from this.
And Tori, to your point, like I even went back and looked at, like some of the production from the wide receivers that he had. He had 3 NFL caliber wide receivers. He had Jalen
They're
Poe,
all doing
Jalen
well
McMillan,
right now.
Rome Odunze, all those guys on NFL rosters right now. So, yeah, if you got guys like that winning on the outside, I mean, why throw over the middle? You do what works in college, and you do it over and over again to people till they stop it.
Yeah, I think you do that on any level, just to be, if we're being honest. So speaking of that, the Falcons kind of did something over and over and over again for 5 weeks, and that's looked pretty vanilla, looked pretty one-dimensional. How different for you, Aaron, was it with this Falcons offense, looking at this offense and how it was operating with Penix as QB1?
I think it was very different. We talked about it on the postcast that I was a big fan of what Zach Robinson was calling, because a lot of this stuff was things that I thought we would see from day one in this offense, even when Kirk Cousins was the quarterback, with a higher degree of play action passing this week, probably I think the highest they had so far this season. And you also saw them really attacking the middle of the field, as Tori was saying, like, getting rid of that narrative about Michael Penix. And those were all elements that I wanted to see this offense do consistently, and to see them be able to do it as well with Michael Penix at a higher level than we had seen really at any point this season, I think is very promising for what this offense can continue to grow and develop into as, Penix continues to get reps, not just this season, but into future seasons. So to me, like, looking at this offense, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, like this offense had been very conservative the last couple of weeks under Kirk Cousins, in part due to the interceptions, and basically their solution to Kirk Cousins' slump was, we're just going to focus on running the football, and to sort of see them sort of open things back up with a healthy dose of the run game, with the play action passing game, and some of the throws, in that intermediate level of the defense, I think were major improvements to what we had seen these last couple of weeks.
I think something too, that every single time they went empty, I felt like it presented an opportunity for a big play. Like it was one of those things where I felt confident sitting there watching Michael Penix operate in this offense. And then the fact that it was like very obvious to me that they were wanting to push the ball downfield. They were wanting to get back to some explosive plays between, to your point, Free, between kind of that like 15 to 20 yard range, which is something I think they've been missing recently, was very refreshing. And it, you knew, I mean, Michael Penix, you knew what his arm strength was. You have guys being like, he's the most developed arm talent coming out of this draft class. You had Matt Ryan talking about the arm talent over and over again in the week leading up to this game. And someone who has arm talent himself, and Matt Ryan, kind of saying that this is an incredible, or a very pointed talent that he has. I mean, the fact that they were willing to use it and use it downfield, I think there are some moments that, even when Michael Penix was talking himself, he was like, yeah, I know that there were some moments where I missed on some things and the connection really wasn't there. We forget he's had 2 full practices with Darnell Mooney, Drake London throwing to them. I think, like, he even said after the game, he's like, I'm very confident that those moments are going to be few and far between as our connection grows. I think if you're a Falcons fan, like, you're sitting there just kind of like licking your chops, being like, oh, all right, like, here we go. And so I don't know. I the fact that this was, I keep saying this, but the fact that that was the first time that we've seen him, and he's maybe thrown only a week's worth of passes to these guys, I mean, I think it bodes well, especially when he was talking after the game about wanting to high point a ball to Drake London a bit better. And now he knows, we're seeing this guy learn with each and every throw he makes. And yes, he has to learn quickly. It's trial by fire for sure. But this was the right, I think it was, they got everything that they could have wanted to out of him in that first start.
My heart is just happy, y'all. I mean, I don't know if y'all know this or not. My heart is happy. I'm almost getting emotional because, like, you know, when you see someone and you know what their capabilities are, it's almost like you're a proud parent, because I know Raheem Morris is excited. I know Zach Robinson was excited because I think there was a report coming out about how the whole process went down with, you know, when they went to go fly out. They flew out to Washington for the private workout, and they were just saying, watching him throw the ball in those conditions, and he was just like, "Oh man, it's all good, you know. I'm gonna throw this rock, you know. Y'all gonna like what y'all see." And it just the quiet confidence that he has, and it just transfers to the field so easily. And I think that, you know, as the season winds down, I think people are gonna really understand, like, this young brother has a opportunity to really establish himself as one of those good up-and-coming quarterbacks in the NFL, specifically in this draft class, because we know there's a lot of hype starting to build around guys like Jay Daniels and Drake May. And you talking about the Sunday night matchup coming up. This is going to be very interesting. It's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that game for sure.
Yeah. And listen, I was going to ask this question about 7, but I'm going to hold it because I think 7 deserves more than just 90 seconds to talk about him. So I'm going to pivot to something that 2 of you guys have said, and Free, I want you to jump in on this one as well as we wrap up, because I got to tell you, the last 5 weeks, I'm sure for you guys as well, being a part of the media that covers the Falcons, but people still know we support the team. We want good for the team. Like, it's been tough because we're getting the texts, we're getting the calls, we're getting the DMs with everybody asking us what the heck is wrong and when are you going to make a change and what's going to happen. So this morning I made a mistake and I called my sales consultant over at my dealership. And I was like, oh no, I just meant to call the dealership. He called back 3 times because he just had to talk about Michael Penix Jr. So it is. And I was like, man, I got a show. He's like, I know, but T, can we just talk? Fine. So I know you guys, it's exciting just for us to be able to see that this pick so far, I know it's only a small sample size, but to be able to see Michael Penix Jr. still get in the game, I don't care who you play. It's the National Football League. I don't care how bad the Giants were. He still delivered. And I do think, to you guys' point, is very refreshing to see that he delivered and that it's an opportunity for this fan base to get excited. Thanks, Dallas Cowboys. Appreciate you. I don't know if you guys had that experience too in the last 24 hours.
I had one. I was actually in an Uber. Like, this was leading up to the game. And one of the guys used to be a listener of 929 the game. You know, he used to work there. And he was just like, oh man, Jarvis. I was like, what's up, bro? He was like, I'm Skip. I was like, oh man, what's up, dog? So we just talking. He was like, yeah, Michael Penix gonna do this. He gonna do that. Oh man, I can't wait. I've been calling for Kirk Cousins to be benched since week 7. I was like, hold up, bro, that's a little bit too far back now. Come on now. He was running through the Bucks around that time, and so you need to calm down just a little bit. But yeah, the excitement that people have about watching this young man play football, I think, like I'm super excited, and just to see how calm he is. He's like, he kind of calms me down. I was like, oh man, bro, you don't the nerve out of you, huh? I was like, I think opposing defense is going to have to really kind of get this stuff together, because the success he had throwing over the middle, that's going to start having those safeties start coming up a little bit, throwing a little bit more pressure at him, and then that's when you got the man beater himself, number 1, Darnell Mooney. You're going to be able to take shots downfield, and I think it's going to open the offense up even more.
Yeah, that fan must have been super excited because he felt the need to DM me with the screenshot from you guys Uber ride. So shout out to him for his excitement. Anywho, the front was lights out.
No way.
The things, Tori, that you and I probably get in the DMs we can't even talk about tonight. But speaking, we're going to switch from DMs to DBs because they were super big in helping the Falcons improve to 4-4 in the bins this season with yesterday's win. We'll discuss it when we take it under further review. This episode of Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy, whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports. Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. That should make you happy because this holiday season, they're also giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas, and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out, and you can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. So, hey, you saw what it was yesterday. Michael Penix Jr. throwing for over 200 yards in his debut. Saquon Barkley, doing things that were similar to what we also saw with Bijan Robinson. We're going to talk about that in a minute as well. So you can have quick, simple, and fun challenges with friends when you have those kinds of situations happen, to see how it helps you out on Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5, because Prize Picks helps you run your game. So, Tori, the other thing that made everybody happy, joy, and wanting to talk and have conversation was what we saw out of Bijan Robinson. Now, look, it was a Bijan Robinson type of day, 94 yards, 22 carries, 2 touchdowns, caught both of his targets. But, Tori, it's when you start stacking up what he's done and the body of work that is culminating even in what we saw yesterday. 3rd multi-TD game, topped 100 scrimmage yards for the 4th straight game, 9 out of 10 games this year, 10 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving, 1,616 scrimmage yards. And the fact that he's in a conversation with Saquon and Derrick Henry, I mean, it's just crazy. So I'm going to challenge you, because I know you're a wordsmith as well, to give me one word. I know. One word describing 7.
It's not one word.
Okay.
I'm going to hyphenate it, which I feel like is not a part of the rules, but I'm making a part of the rules. 1 of 1. This guy is a very special talent, and I don't think anyone can sit there and watch him and not believe that to be true. I think that his feel for the game and the way he visualizes the game and way he feels the presence of defenders and anticipates what they're going to do. There are very few people who have that innate talent to be able to do it, and 2, the athleticism to be able to make dudes miss at this level, play after play after play. He's such a fun player to watch. And I think every single defensive coordinator that has had to scheme around Bijan Robinson, I mean, you look at every single post-game interview, whether it's a win or a loss, the head coach or the defensive coordinator or any player on an opposing defense says something about Bijan Robinson. He's the way to any success the Falcons can have. Yeah. And I think that's why you go out and you spend a number 8 overall pick on Bijan Robinson. He's worthy of a top 10 overall pick. I think Drake London has been worthy of a top 10 overall pick. Jury is still out on whether or not the Falcons made the right decision about Michael Penix. But I think for the sake of the conversation, Bijan Robinson is everything that you wanted him to be, and I think so much more. And we're not even talking about the person. We're specifically talking about the player. And he opens up so much for you in terms of what you can do offensively. I mean, special, one of one, like those are the words that I would use.
Yeah, and Aaron, that doesn't even take into consideration all those stats that we talked about. One of the favorite stats for this show, which is that blocking that he does. Like if there was a stat out there, we probably would be excited about that too. But when you think about Bijan, what's maybe that one word that comes to mind to describe just how amazing he's been this season? Not using amazing.
I would say miraculous. Jarvis and I have joked in the past that he is Mr. Walk on Water. So to me, it's like a borderline miracle every time he gets the football to create the yards, after contact, before contact, all the things that he does at an elite level. And so for me, like, it's just, as Tori said, he's a one-of-one type of player that can do, execute at a high level in all three phases that you're looking at for a running back, whether it's running the football, catching the football, or as you say, T, that really important pass protection, keeping those, $100 million as well as their first round pick investments upright,
That was the conversation, Jarvis, that my sales consultant wants to have too, because he was so excited. Like, now Bijan's free to do Bijan. I'm like, Bijan's been free to do Bijan for a while now. It doesn't matter who's under center. The guy can just go. And it's just so refreshing to be able to have that conversation that, and I'll tell you what my word is in a minute. But before I do that, Jarvis, tell me what your one word is for Bijan.
He's obsessed with being great. Because when you think about the level of talent that Tori just eloquently laid out, that Free just laid out, I think I want to add a little point when you talk about that protection. Because a lot of times, guys like that don't get asked to block in college, right? And a lot of times, if you have a certain level of talent when it comes to, being a running back in the NFL in today's game, you probably won't get asked to block that much either way. But this guy, when I say his rookie year, he was not good in pass pro. And I think that's probably why you saw a little bit more Tyler Algier on third downs, because that was part of his game that I thought that was an asset to that offense at the time. So when you see him take it upon himself to say, you know what, I'm going to be better in this particular this area. And not only did he get better, but he's really good at it too, because he was lined. There was one particular play where he was lined. It was on third down. He was lined up to the right of Michael Penix, and he came across the formation and picked up that blitz like it was a third level blitz. So those guys got a lot of momentum coming from on that side of the football. So when you see him just come across and just smack that guy, and you just see the guy just disappear, and it just opens up a nice throwing lane for Michael Penix to be able to complete the pass on third down. That's high level running back IQ type stuff. So I will say this guy is obsessed with being one of the better running backs in the entirety of the NFL.
And if I take all three of those words that you guys used, I would say evolution, because he just keeps getting better. And it's scary because I feel like as good as we've all talked about him being, there's still another level that he can get to. But I think the exciting part is he knows that he has another level that he can get to, and he's absolutely trying to go after getting after that level. And speaking of evolution, guys, getting after it, Aaron, and just continuing to evolve. I know we talked a lot about the defensive front on Sunday, obviously Arnold Ebiketie, and of course, being a Steelers fan, this was like really impressive to me, the fact that he has matched J.J. Watt the last 4 weeks in getting 4 sacks. I thought that was impressive. Also saw somewhere where he's like second in the NFL around that same time frame with pressure rate. So shout out to what he did. We talked about Zach Harrison as well, continuing to evolve. And he was a guy that Calais Campbell told us had sneaky good possibilities of being the guy who could tip a pass, tip a punt, and just be all around disruptive. But let's talk about the secondary, because we didn't get a chance to get to them yesterday. So communication was something that I know we talked about being an issue for the back end at many times throughout this season, but thought it was really cool that Jessie Bates shouted out D. Alford about calling out what ended up being that pick six, because of course we know, the offer took some heat for last week and really has taken some heat the last couple of weeks, right? So what can we say? Can we talk about that Falcons secondary? 19 of the team's 56 tackles, a couple of picks, and of course the pick six, but more importantly, kind of coming together and kind of gelling again at just the right time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you bring up, T. Just because, like, we all saw what D. Alford and everybody not named AJ Terrell did in the secondary against the Minnesota Vikings, and it wasn't great. And we were just like, well, yeah, all these guys need to get replaced this offseason. That kind of was the conclusion I had. I don't know if anybody else had, but that was kind of the conclusion. If the Falcons defense wants to be able to play against the the best offenses in the league, they're probably going to need some better players. And so to see those guys respond in the ways that they did, D. Alford, I thought had a good game last week against the Raiders, almost had an interception in that game, showing some great instincts in that one. And to sort of see these guys go up against this Giants receiver core that, because of a lot of other issues that offense is dealing with, I think this receiver core with the Giants is actually a very talented group of receivers with Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson. And their problem is just mostly everybody else on that offense is not good enough for them to be able to operate at the level that I think they're capable of. And so that will be obviously an issue that the Giants are going to deal with this offseason. But for me, it was like seeing this secondary be able to lock down these guys in the ways that they were able to do on Sunday. To me, while you again, because you're just looking at, oh, this Giants offense is bad and all this stuff, it doesn't seem as impressive as I think it is. And so for this secondary to respond in a way that they have these last couple of games after that disaster in Minnesota, to me is really, I think, a testament to what this unit is capable of and playing at the level that we, praised them for at the beginning of the season when we were talking about this defense and being like, the strength of this defense is the secondary and how well they had been playing for the first half of the season. And we just haven't seen that as consistently over these last couple of weeks. And so to see them getting back to that level, I think is, really, good, obviously, great words I'm using, good and stuff. But, this is the right time of year, I think, for this secondary to be playing as well as it has, if this team is going to, overcome the obstacles that they have put themselves in during this final stretch to make this final push for the playoffs.
Yeah, and you're right about that. Correction on not last week. It was 2 weeks ago where, everybody wanted to take the secondary and, just throw them off the cliff. Jarvis, when you look at what the secondary did yesterday, let's talk about just how important they were as well to the Falcons being able to give the Giants the beatdown they were supposed to get.
I remember the conversation that Aaron and I had on Locked On Falcons, because every week we always point out a guy that we need to be concerned about, or the Falcons need to be looking at, or Jamie Leck needs to pay attention to. Hey, I remember this name this time. Aaron, how about that? We talking about evolution. I'm evolving, baby. We out here. So I think the secondary, though, and I even threw out some numbers. I was like, if Malik Neighbors has 67 yards for 5 or 6 catches and a touchdown, you've done a really good job. So guess what he had? He had 68 yards and no touchdowns. That's what I'm talking about right there. Understanding, identifying who could be a problem for us and going out there and say, you know what? You're not going to go off. Sorry, you might be able to get a little work, but you're not about to destroy us and potentially have an opportunity to win the game because of the play that you had, the level of play that you had. And I love the fact that these guys in these past 2 weeks, now granted, against the Raiders and the Giants, but 2 awesome players and Brock Bowers and Malik Neighbors, you held those guys down. And a lot of people, are kind of getting up in arms like, well, it was the Giants. I'm like, man, well, it's the NFL. And then if you have a problem with how they played against this team, look at teams that they were supposed to beat in the past. And have they done that? Have they went out there and just beat the brakes off of them? Absolutely not. So, yeah, when the Falcons actually do what they're supposed to do, you have to give them credit and give the credit to the players and the coaches for coming up with a nice game plan. And I think they executed it very well on the back end of the defense.
I think too, to this point, and then I'll talk about the secondary, but you have to kind of almost compare and contrast the feelings coming out of the Raiders win versus the feelings coming out of the win against the Giants. These are 2 teams that the Falcons should have beaten handily. These are 2 teams that had 2 wins on the season. These are 2 teams that had a lot of inefficiencies, both offensively and defensively. The fact that they did what they did against the Raiders versus the Giants, I think tells you all you need to know about the decision that they made. The only thing that's different from one to the other was the quarterback. And I think that I personally kind of hang on to that, and it kind of reevaluates and validates the decision that they made at the quarterback position. But I digress. We're talking about the secondary. I do think that Jessie Bates, we have said it before, I'll say it again, Jessie Bates is worth every single penny you pay him. And I do think that you have to have the conversation. Is he is he on the Mount Rushmore of free agency signings that the Falcons have ever had? Like, because you're in the conversation with Tony Gonzalez, John Abraham, right, Michael Turner, like you're having these, like, are we willing to put Jessie Bates in that conversation as well? I mean, I think he's going to be overshadowed by the team and the structure and the quarterback conversation of what this era of Falcons football has been. Mm-hmm. But you cannot discredit what Jessie Bates has meant to this team in a time where they needed solid defensive play in the back end, especially. And it really feels like every single time this team needs a big play, a momentum shifting play, it is Jessie Bates who's making that play, and you can't discredit that.
Indeed. And, we talk, like you said, that's kind of him flying under the radar in the pantheon of the Falcons franchise. We're going to talk about some other guys who may have flown under the radar in Sunday's win. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I mean, betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score, that's pretty darn cool, because think about it. The passing touchdown didn't quite happen for Michael Penix Jr. last night, but you better watch out for this coming Sunday. So that's an opportunity also. We expect this might be a high-scoring match come Sunday night, so that might be an opportunity to take advantage of FanDuel as well. Now, you can visit FanDuel.com. That's where you can join today. FanDuel.com is where you have that chance to win those $250 in bonus bets that I mentioned. So that's for new customers. That's how you finish this season strong, $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So don't forget, right after you wrap up watching the Atlanta Football Party, visit FanDuel.com to join today, because you can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and America's #1 sportsbook. So we talked about Bijan Robinson. We all agree he is him on offense. We had a couple players who were him on defense, although I'll put Jessie Bates right at the top of that list, if you will, for yesterday. But we talked about AK, Cade, and Judon. The good thing is we actually have a couple of hymns to talk about on the defensive side of the ball, which is fantastic, Free. But there are a couple guys in there that maybe we didn't get an opportunity to talk about, those unsung heroes that may have done some things here and there that also helped to contribute to the Falcons win. Who might be one of the unsung heroes from Sunday's game for you?
Let's talk about Zach Harrison. He's been solid. He got the tip that led to the Matt Judon pick 6. And I know there was a lot of talk going into the season about, Zach Harrison. He had so much success at the end of last year playing edge, playing that role that Calais Campbell had played in the Falcons 4-3 front as a defensive end. And now he's kicking inside as a 3-4 defensive end. And he's going to be playing more in the interior. And the Falcons, because of their pass rush woes, it was just like they need all the help they can get in terms of that edge rusher position. Maybe Zach Harrison can help them. But you've seen sort of the parallel, I think, from last year, where you just saw as the season wore on, Zach Harrison consistently get better. Like he doesn't make sort of all the sort of highlight reel plays by getting a ton of sacks and all these things. But you've seen the last couple of weeks, he had the safety last week. He had the tip this past week. I think the thing that is so underrated about Zach Harrison is just like how strong he is. Like, and like, I don't even know if he's like fully grown into his body with the weight that he put on this off season and whatnot. Like, I feel like he's probably, if he wanted to, he probably put on another like 15 or 20 pounds of muscle, and it's just like
big guy. That's Zach Garrison.
And it's just like imagining what he could be with like even more mass on him in terms of just like because every week I watch him, and like he doesn't get pushed around when it comes to the run defense. Like, he's using his size, his length, his strength, and all these various things to hold the point of attack, to collapse the pocket, and do these things just quietly a contributor in this defense. He's not necessarily always the guy that's making the game-changing plays, but he's had a couple these last couple of weeks. And so to me, I think he's the perfect embodiment of sort of that unsung hero that is consistently doing his job. And you're just kind of looking at like, man, like that 1 year mentorship under Calais Campbell really is starting to pay off for this Falcon team. And I'm very excited to see what he can do, not only this season, but into the future as he continues to grow as a football player that he has shown, tremendous ability so far this season.
Yeah, guards should be shaking in their boots, and tight ends blocking him, not a good look. But Jarvis, who's an unsung hero for you that we didn't get a chance to talk about, or who maybe quietly had that good game on Sunday?
I mean, this is a guy that I've called out numerous amount of times on this show, on the postcast, so I have to go with Matthew Judon. Like, I have to talk about Matthew Judon. And here's the thing, and I'm not going to even talk about the pick six. There was a sequence of plays that kind of just really stood out to me. The offsides, the play where he went off, he was offsides. And then I think the play right after that, he was trying to time that snap count. And I think the broadcaster said, like, well, he looks like he was offsides on that play too. That's the type of stuff that veterans do. Listening to the snap count. Okay, I understand a certain cadence when he's about to get ready to snap the football, so I can get his advantage on this guy that I know I can beat. And you just see him just really just locking in and being locked in on doing what he's supposed to do, what he was brought here to do, and that is rush the passer. And I think that's one of the things that I had to just point out, because I think that when you understand like the elements of the game that are high level, once you get on that level, you look for any type of advantage that you can get. And for him to be trying to time out that snap count like he was consistently, I felt like, hey, this is the guy that needs to be highlighted, because like I said, I was the first person to call him out, or everybody else that was calling him out. But, when he starts to do things like this lets me know that, hey, things are a little different. And whatever that is, or whatever it was, he in shape now, or he likes the scheme that Jimmy Lake is calling because he called it out, So, hey, you better start doggone playing well once they make those necessary adjustments that you feel like they need to make. So I have to kind of commend him for that.
And I commend you for being a big enough man to give him your unsung hero award, Matthew. And not calling him 15, giving him his name back. It's a beautiful thing. Tori, who's your unsung hero from Sunday?
So, question, do I have to stick with the defense, or can I?
No, you give it to anybody, because mine won't even be a player, by the way, so go for it.
Okay. My unsung hero is the offensive line collectively as a group. Yeah. I think that I think we've been talking a lot about like how clean of an operation Michael Penix ran. I think a major part of that is with his connection with this offensive line as well, specifically Drew Dahlman at center. I think when you make a change like that, and it's kind of that relationship is one of the most important relationships on the field. And I think the fact that the Falcons kind of didn't miss a beat in terms of their offensive operation says a lot about Michael Penix, yes, but also I think this offensive line as a whole as well. And let's be honest, I know that there was a lot of talk about now Caleb McGarry is the blind side, like he's taking care of the blind side. There was a lot of kind of questions and speculation. And, I think and I know people are going to sit there and be like, oh, well, it was just the Giants. It's just Brian Burns is on that defensive line. Like, don't discredit just because the Giants are not performing this year to the level that they probably would want to, just because they don't have the run defense that they probably would want. That doesn't mean that Brian Burns hasn't been really good for this New York team all this year. So let's kind of sit here in the fact that Michael Penix did not take a sack at all. There was only one time where he got wrapped up and he had the wherewithal to throw it to the feet of Drake London, which again, I mean, that doesn't, I don't think that happens if it's not Michael Penix in that pocket. So
Sure.
I think you cannot talk about this, to not talk about this offensive line and their protection and the job that they did and making sure that this was a clean operation. Like you can't overlook that. And I think it's being overlooked because they were facing the Giants.
Yeah. And I think for me, that's kind of why I said my unsung hero would not be a player, because there were so many times during this season where we were like, are you kidding me? Another penalty. And it was a bonehead penalty at the worst possible time in the game. So for me, the unsung hero is 3 penalties for 30 yards, because I still think that's a respectable number of penalties. And the fact that those penalties weren't in those critical moments where it completely set the Falcons back or completely changed the scope of what they could and couldn't do, putting them in all those third and long situations, I think that was pretty important as well. Now, those were the unsung heroes in a good way. But as much as the Falcons were functioning on all cylinders, I saw someone say that. I said, well, it seems like they were functioning on all cylinders. Not so much, because there was one cylinder that was kind of like, I don't know, Jarvis, I'm going to be nice. I was going to say Mr. Can't Get Right. Is that nice enough? So there was that one cylinder that just, is there anything that can be done to get Kyle Pitts back on track? So maybe we're having a conversation about him being one of the unsung heroes Sunday night. Anything? Just no? Okay.
I look at it like this, T. I know what Kyle Pitts can be, and
which is why it's so painful.
It's very painful. And a lot of people are comparing him to like Vic Beasley and, hey, just don't want to and everything like that. But I feel like we've seen the peak, the ceiling for Vic Beasley. We saw that in 2016. Led the league in sacks, led the league in forced fumbles. And that has to be put on a different level than 1,000 yards and 1 touchdown. I'm talking about being able to have an impact on a team to help you go to a Super Bowl versus being able to get a stat. That is pretty cool as a rookie, as a tight end, but that team was under 500. That team went 7-10, so all those things that, people are trying to throw out there, it's just that I don't feel like we've seen Kyle Pitts' peak. And I don't think we're going to see it in a Falcons uniform. Wherever he goes, if he plays out his contract and they try to give him a less than stellar fourth overall pick type of contract, I feel like he's in a space where he's going to have to get himself together in the offseason. I don't think this is a quick fix. I don't think just because Michael Penix is in there, now he's about to get all this stuff together and be running consistent routes and all that stuff, right? I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to take a lot more than that in order for him to have an impact on this team this season.
And that's actually a great call, Jarvis, because Tori, that was one of the questions that I kept getting as well. Like, so what do you think? Is this going to be a good thing, MPX for Kyle Pitts? And I was like, I don't know if that's the panacea for KP. I'm not sure. And I know that you spend a lot of time in the locker room. You spend a lot of time with these players. And you said something earlier that I want to caveat as well. We talked about Bijan Robinson, and we know he's just as great off the field as he is on. And this is nothing personal towards Kyle Pitts.
No.
Great guy. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Kyle Pitts that, to your point, we've seen, obviously, Bijan, top 10, what he can do. Obviously, Drake, top 10, what he can do. Little shade of what Michael Penix can do just yesterday. Just haven't seen it again in Kyle Pitts. Is there anything that we're going to see possibly this season that can reset him to where we know he can get to? In your opinion?
Yeah, it's really difficult because I think that I kind of stuck my neck out this week on social media because there was a lot of there was a lot made about the comments of Kyle Pitts and Drake London in the aftermath of making the switch from Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix.
Yes.
Kyle Pitts said, I just work here. That was the decision that was made. Drake London says, I don't really care who's throwing the ball to me. As long as it's in my area, I'll catch it. They got a lot of heat for those comments. And I went out on a limb and I was kind of like, yo, like, what do you want them to say? Kyle Pitts has had 6 different quarterbacks since he was drafted. Drake London has had 5 different quarterbacks since he was drafted. And I kind of was like, what do you want them to say? What do you want them to do? What is realistic for them to say right now in this moment? And looking back, it's tough because Drake London had success regardless of who was quarterbacking. Kyle Pitts had to go through an injury that, I think lingered a lot longer, but to a certain extent, like, this was the year. I said it going into this season. This was the year for Kyle Pitts to show us how much he can be a game changer in this league. Because, and I said this too, what is his next contract going to look like? Is he going to get paid like a receiver? Or is he going to get paid like a tight end? Because those two things are fundamentally different, even though the tight end position is evolving and changing with the likes of George Kittle, Travis Kelce, et cetera, et cetera. But even in that, it's like, we're not talking about Kyle Pitts playing to the degree of what those guys are as a number 4 overall draft pick. You have to have the conversation. You have to have the production. And right now it's not there. I don't think it could ever, to Jarvis's point, I don't think that it could never not be there. Like, I don't think this means that he can't tap into kind of what he was in his first year with Atlanta. But right now we're just not seeing it.
Yeah. And it's a tough thing because we know, like we said, what that potential could be. But speaking of potential, Falcons have a lot of potential as they head into this game against the Commanders. What makes you confident about their chances? We'll discuss when we look ahead. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Prize Picks. So with Prize Picks, if you love watching the game, you are going to absolutely love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy football, whether it's football, actually, basketball, or any of your favorite sports. Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. So again, this might be that opportunity for you coming up next week because Michael Penix Jr., he might just ball out and he might just get a touchdown. So have a little fun with it. It's quick. It's simple. You can challenge your friends to join you. So download that PrizePicks app today. Of course, right after you finish watching the Atlanta Football Party, use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Again, download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDON NFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5 because PrizePicks helps you to run your game. So this is going to be interesting because I also heard some conversation like, yeah, we can go into the district and we can shock the world. And I know they actually play in Maryland, do the Washington Commanders, but to me, in my mind, it's still the district. So ultimately, I think that's actually legitimate because if you look back just a couple of weeks ago, the Saints made it happen. So there's no reason that you might think that this team can't make it happen as well. But in order to have even gotten there, Jarvis, you have to absolutely look back on the fact that the Falcons still have an opportunity, a shot at the postseason, not just because of what happened on last night with the Dallas Cowboys beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the Falcons took care of their business as well by beating the Giants. So can we, before we get to the Commanders game, just at least acknowledge the fact that the Falcons have eclipsed 7 wins for the first time since 2017, and they're on the cusp of their first winning season since 2016?
Yeah, you have to acknowledge it, right? Because that's why you made the change. That's why you fired Arthur Smith. That's why you did the whole carousel with spin the wheel on what quarterback is going to be on there, right? So, and the Falcons, that's why the Falcons doubled down on it, right? So, like, hey, we need a lead processor, right? Okay, I didn't know that was going to have an S on the end of that word. All the processors. So, to make sure that, hey, I even joke about this because I always say that Terry Fontenot, as a general manager, he needs to worry about now and the future. And as Raheem Morris, as the head coach of the team, he's worried about now. Because, hey, I'm going to be judged on how many wins I get, not about guys being good 3 or 4 years down the road. So I think that those guys probably came into the room and said, you know what? Hey, man, I need Kirk, so we can try to get some wins now. And then Terry was like, yeah, Kirk is fine. That's fine. But for the future, so I can keep my job, because Thomas Dimitroff, got a lot of grace because he drafted Matt Ryan, the face of the franchise. So I think that, Terry Fontenot was following in the same suit, saying, you know what? I understand getting the guy for now, but, as far as going forward in the future, I think that this is what needed to happen. So I think overall, just being able to be in this situation right now and on the cusp of being in the playoffs for the first time since 2017 and having a winning season like you just laid out, this is why you brought Raheem Morris in, and it's why you kept Terry Fontenot around to, along for the ride.
Yeah, and Tori, I'm thinking the same thing, like, as much as, and of course, I'm just as excited as everybody else about the possibility of the Falcons returning to the postseason. But in order for you to be in that position, you have to have gotten to this point of winning 8-7. And I'm just going to go out on the limb and say they're going to at least pick up one of these last 2 games, if not both, which means that there would be a winning season. And that is a conversation that we haven't had, because it was like Groundhog Day, 7-10,
Yeah.
7-10, 7-10. So I just didn't want to gloss over the fact that the Falcons are also on the cusp of doing something that we haven't had a chance to talk about in quite a while.
Yeah, and this next game coming up against the Commanders is for your playoff future. And it is the biggest game of the 2024 season. And I think that it's going to be the marker of what this team is moving forward. And I talk a lot about like the Falcons era and everything like that, and like what this era of Falcons football will be remembered as. If you can go up to the Commanders and beat them, and you can find a way to get into the playoffs in a couple of weeks, that's the marker of something that people will remember. What are people going to remember about this team outside of Kirk Cousins started the year and then you go to Michael Penix? If you can turn this thing around, that's what people will remember. And I think in order for this team, this organization to be different and kind of be like, no, we're not just going to sit in what we've known and we're going to kind of make the same mistakes over and over, and it's going to be the same old Falcons. In order to get rid of that narrative, you have to no longer be the same old Falcons.
Yeah.
And I think this game against the Commanders is your opportunity to change the narrative of what you have become to this point.
I think that's a great call that Tori makes, Free, because that was the narrative that you had to listen to ad nauseum, and it just built, and it got louder and louder and louder over those weeks. And I'll be honest, if you think about what we were talking about maybe like a week or a week and a half ago, when we were asking the question of, we believe that there should be a change under center, but will it happen? 99% of the people in media and even the fan base, and no, that's not going to happen, because that's not what the Falcons do. They're going to ride with Kirk, just like they said. It was still a pretty bold move for Raheem Morris to say, I know what I said. Yes, I said what I said, but this is where we are and this is what we need to do. And that is how you're having the conversation about this team being on the cusp of winning season, having an opportunity to change the narrative, because they actually made a bold move last week that nobody thought they would make. And it at least has paid dividends so far. And I believe it'll pay dividends regardless of how it turns out, although we want it to turn out good this coming week. But I think if you keep making bold moves like that, you will change the narrative about what this Falcons organization is called to be, which is same old, here we go again.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, T. I mean, it last week was so hard given how they called that game in the second half, to be able to go back and say, well, we're going to ride with Kirk, even though they showed through their actions in that Raiders game, in the second half of that game, that they had no confidence in Kirk Cousins. And as they say, actions speak louder than words. So Raheem can say all the things he wants to say about how much confidence he has in Kirk. And again, talking about this team being in a position to have a winning season. They wouldn't be here without Kirk Cousins and the illustrious Kirktober, and the incredible run that we had for those 4 or 5 weeks back then.
When Free was in his happy place.
Yes, that's all I want, team. It's just can we just talk about a good football team? That's all I ever want with this Falcons team. But I think you're right when it comes to what Raheem Morris did this past week to basically be like, look, we're coming off a win. We need to run the table at the end of the season, and we're going to toss the keys to a rookie. And I know for me personally, like, it was nothing against Michael Penix, but it was just kind of like, okay, well, if he's just a typical rookie, then, maybe you win one out of these last 3 games and you just kind of hope for the best going into next year at that point in time. And I think for Penix to come and play as well as he did, for this Falcons team to look as good as they did against the Giants, you got to give some credit to this coaching staff for getting this team ready. Even if you want to criticize the coaching staff for, dragging their feet on making that quarterback change, they had this team operating at a level against the Giants that we just really haven't seen from this team all season long. And so I think they deserve some credit for that, regardless of whatever criticism that you want to throw at them. It's the damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of notion when it comes to the NFL, where, you're always going to get criticism if things don't shake out the way that you want them. And when they do shake out the way that you want it, like we saw this past Sunday against the Giants, I think you do also deserve some credit for, stepping up to the plate and doing what you needed to do.
Now, Tori, as far as the win Sunday, yes, we can give credit to a nice game called by Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, Jimmy Lake, but Jessie Bates actually gives credit to the Red Helmets. He says red helmets and pick sixes go together. And the Falcons are 13-3 when they wear those red helmets, dating back to 2009. That's a fun fact. But are you a fan of the red helmets?
I am. 100% I am. Y'all know I am. I think when we were talking like at the beginning of the season about like what uniform combinations we like, I'm a big red helmet stan. I think they look so good. I think they photograph well. I think, like, just kind of from a visual standpoint, I think they look good. And yeah, Jessie Bates, honestly, just keep Jessie Bates in the red helmet. Everybody else can, it probably doesn't do well for his like ability to disguise what he's doing, because he'll be the only one in a red helmet. So maybe like it kind of the juxtaposition of that. But I mean, heck, that I just think they look so good. They look so good, and I love that they have been able to wear them, like the throwback helmets. You're able to wear them more and more and more, and it's almost kind of become, I mean, they've worn it for what, 4 games this year, 3 games, 4 games. So I'm like, keep it around. I know that's a hot take for some people, but I'm very much team red helmet.
Yeah, that guy to your left, he's not feeling the red helmet, clearly, because that face is like, red helmet. So, Jarvis, do you not like the red helmets?
Oh, I love the red helmets. I'm team red helmet too. Yeah. I mean, because I'm on board with exactly what Tori said. And for me, I love the color combination, right? Black and red. We understand, like, so, but you got to get it right though. Like that red helmet with those black jerseys. Oh my gosh! Like when NPX came out of that tone, I was like, oh. That 9 looks good.
Yeah.
That 9 looks good with that red. Like it's something about that. Yeah.
There's this one picture that I used for the like cover photo of the column that I wrote post game, and it's him walking out of the tunnel with the lasers bouncing off of the red helmet, and I'm like, it's so good. It's so good.
Man. Yeah. If only they would have introduced the offense,
I know.
That would have been good. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. What about you, Free? Red helmet, thumbs up or thumbs down, or is it a caveat of red helmet as long as the unis look like this and that?
No, I'm a fan of the red helmets. I don't really have strong uniform takes. I'm just like, win football games. I don't care what you look like. Like, that's my opinion. But like, I know Other people are like, you got to look good in order to play good, and I get that. I feel like the only person that has a strong negative reaction to the red helmets is D-Led.
It's D-Led, yes.
He's
the only one pushing that narrative.
Yeah, he's
only person.
The good fight, I guess. I don't know, the bad fight, whatever, on an island by himself.
Well, his argument is that the Falcons played super, super bad when they wore it, but you can't go like back to when they wore it, in the 70s or whenever it was.
Yeah.
Like, you got to talk about when they've worn it in the modern football era, which has been very good for them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I was thinking the same. Like, I only know one person, and usually OGs, they kind of like old school throwback type of stuff. So I'm like, I don't understand. But you know what? That is D's fight, and we're just gonna let D fight the good fight for the red helmet. But as for this show, we love the red helmet, and we hope that they bring those helmets back as often as is humanly possible. You know who else we love? Our everydayers. We appreciate you guys for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with Aaron as your second listen, and check out Tori's awesome work at atlantafalcons.com and on Rise Up Tonight. We will see you guys Thursday to talk about the big showdown in the nation's capital Sunday between the Falcons and Commanders, even though we understand it's on the M side of the DMV. Merry Christmas to you guys.